Girls, how do you know when a guy is genuinely good and not just trying to get into your pants? Story 1. I found true love while stranded. Our first Reddit post comes from Plet0.
The night I knew I'd marry my husband was before we even started dating. I knew he'd been interested for a few months, but I wasn't available, and he respected that. He never pushed the boundaries I had set. One night, I was working a late shift and got ready to leave around 10 p.m. I'd been dropped off earlier in the afternoon because I'd forgotten to fill up my car with gas, so it was sitting on the side of the freeway about a half-hour drive away. I called my ride multiple times. Nothing. I called my roommate. Nothing. I called a friend who lived in the same town. Nothing. I sent out texts. After half an hour, I still hadn't received any replies. I knew my coworker, now husband, lived in a town between where we worked and where I lived. I decided to call a guy I barely knew outside of work and hope he was as kind as he seemed. 15 minutes later, he was picking me up. Of course, I was embarrassed and beside myself that no one had answered my calls or texts. He drove me to the nearest 24-hour store, bought a gas can, drove to a gas station, went inside to pay for the gas, and came out with a cup of coffee. It was getting cold outside. He then drove me back to my car, helped me get it started, and followed me back to the same gas station so I could fill up in case something went wrong. I had plenty of money. I'm just forgetful. I stated this multiple times throughout the night. He just kept saying, "You've had a long day. Let me help." We got to the gas station and he filled up my tank. He also came back out with a pack of the brand of cigarettes I smoked at the time. Neither of us smokes anymore, but that was part of how we bonded initially. Me: "You didn't have to do that." Him: "You said you were out." Me: "I can buy a pack in the morning. You keep them." Him: "You know I don't smoke this brand." And he handed them to me. We were standing there, having a smoke, wrapping up the night, and I just started tearing up and told him, "I'm glad you exist." That's something we still say to each other now and then to this day. He never brought it up after that. Except years later, he told me how angry he was that no one had come to get me. He also confessed that no one had ever told him they were happy he existed, and that he was happy he hadn't decided to drink that night like he normally would have.
That's a lot of errands for a first date. I guess you could say he really gassed up her night. Story 2. I left my fiancée for my best friend. Our next Reddit post comes from Anonymous.
I knew my husband was a keeper. He had been my friend first, but we lost contact because he had a crazy girlfriend. When we reconnected, she was officially his ex-girlfriend, but I had an emotionally cruel fiancé. He talked me out of it. He helped me get the courage to leave, and then he waited for me to heal. I gave him no time frame. I told him that I needed to be single before I made another commitment because he deserved to have all of me and be more than a rebound. Neither of us saw other people. We talked every day. I told him he didn't have to wait, but he insisted. When we saw each other again for the first time, he was an OTR truck driver. It clicked. We were meant to be. He switched to regional driving, I went back to college, and now we're building our lives. 7 years together, 4 married.
Story 3. You should have intimacy with me. I'm a nice guy. Our next Reddit post comes from Porterossa.
Nice guys are nice to you. Nice guys are nice to people they don't want to get anything out of. I also have a theory that nice guys in the "you should have intimacy with me, I'm a nice guy" sense don't realize that being nice is the bare minimum, and thus you have to bring something else to the table. Be funny, be smart, be interesting. Hell, be attractive. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some appeal in aesthetics. But don't claim nice like that's an achievement. You're supposed to be nice. Bragging about it is a sign that you don't understand that, and it's a pretty good indication that it's not genuine.
Story 4. My relationship status repels guys. Our next Reddit post comes from Desha Drama.
It's generally easiest to tell through how they treat people differently, but seeing them learn about your relationship status is obviously a shortcut if it's available to you. It's always a bummer when you're having a great time with a group of people and a guy you were hitting it off with, platonically in your view, learns you're in a relationship and immediately starts to ignore you. It always really makes me sad. Not that it happens a ton, I'm not a smoke show or anything. It's like, oh, I guess I'm just not as funny and interesting as I thought I was. That person didn't actually enjoy our conversation, he was just working on a potential lead. It really brings you low as a woman to see that guy continue to enthusiastically socialize with the other guys in attendance after he stopped talking to you upon discovering your unavailability. I acknowledge the potential downsides to being on the male side of this equation. I was aware of them already, but now I've got an inbox nice and full of the same few messages over and over about how I just need to see it from a different perspective. I'm only trying to share my own experiences and my own perspective of the downsides for women.
Story 5. I fell for someone while I'm with another guy. Our next Reddit post comes from ctrems3.
So my boyfriend and I were friends for a couple years before we got together. I was dating another guy the entire time. I actually fell for my current BF while dating the other guy. X was a cruel idiot. I didn't cheat on him, so I regret nothing. He was into me and very much wanted to date me, but since I had a boyfriend, he accepted that it wasn't a possibility and was content to be my friend. Although I complained about the ex to him all the time, he never once badmouthed him or disrespected our ex and my relationship. And when it got painful for him to be in love with a girl he couldn't have, he didn't take it out on me. He simply distanced himself a bit and let himself heal. He is a good man.
Maybe she should thank her ex for being such a fool. It led her to her true love. Story 6. Spotting a genuine guy is easier than you think. Our next Reddit post comes from 23 and Uncensored.
Watch his behavior. A genuinely good guy will invest his time in you, even when busy, reaching out to see how your day was because he cares. He'll want to learn about you, not just superficial facts, but your hopes, family, and what's important to you. He'll support your hopes, dreams, and ambitions, prioritizing your studies over a party if needed. He'll show you off, going on dates, posting pictures, and introducing you to his friends and family. He'll engage in meaningful conversations, connecting on an intellectual and emotional level. A lot can also be said from a guy's language. Listen for the way he speaks. Does he say you're beautiful or puts you down? You should do more squats. Only talk sensually about your looks. Watch his eyes. There's a difference between a loving look and a dirty look. Keep in mind that everyone has flaws, and nobody is perfect. To expect anyone to complete a checklist on a daily basis is excessive. We are human. Mistakes happen. But with a genuinely good man, it won't be an everyday occurrence. He will care and always strive to improve. These are just a few differences that I've noticed about the players and the man who treats me like a princess. Hope it helps you. Best of luck. You'll meet your Prince Charming.
Story 7. Keeping a fine line between friendships. Our next Reddit post comes from Puluzu.
I think there is an aspect to this that a lot of women don't seem to understand about guys. It's not as black and white as trying to get into your pants versus not trying to get into your pants. If a guy is single and straight and you are at least moderately good looking to him, odds are he would be very happy if you suddenly wanted to have no strings attached intimacy with him. That doesn't mean him showing interest in you. Wanting to talk to you is him actively trying to get into your pants even if he finds you attractive. Does that make sense? I have loads of female friends that I find attractive, who I like spending time with and talking to as human beings like any other who I've never actively tried to hit. But if any of them suddenly felt like having intimacy with me, I'd totally be game.
Story 8. The time I almost missed my chance because of social norms. Our next Reddit post comes from Brooklyn Nets.
Why is this a binary? You can be a good guy and still want to have intimacy with someone. This kind of thinking has left us in this weird bind in which both men and women have to spend a lot of time and effort pretending they don't want to sleep. I recently slept with someone I've known for a while, and afterward she asked why I hadn't made a move a few weeks earlier when we were alone at my place. I told her I didn't want to seem like a creep. I asked her why she hadn't made a move, and she said she didn't want to seem like a call girl. So there we were, two idiots who wanted to bone but didn't, because of this ridiculous idea that you can either desire intimacy or be a good guy girl.
Story 9. The funniest thing I've ever done on a first date. Our next Reddit post comes from Anonymous.
I once met a girl at an outlet mall, and we got to talking for a while, and eventually it got late and dark. I'm kind of a shy guy, so I hesitated a bit, but I asked if she needed a ride to her car. It was dark and a big parking lot, so even though I was interested in her, I also felt obligated to make sure she was safe. She actually said no because she wasn't that far, and I just followed up with if it was okay for me to at least walk her to her car, and she said yes. We got to her car, and I asked for her number, and she shyly smiled and was like, And I got the hint right away and said, I get it. It's cool. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great night. Smiled and turned to walk away. I get a few steps and I hear her open her door, but then she goes, Wait! I stop and turn and joke, Nope, too late. She laughs and I walk over and we exchange numbers. We dated for 6 months, and sometime during that, all she told me that how chill I was about being rejected made her instantly like me. And not in a pity way, she just realized I wasn't going to treat her like crap if she turned me down.
Story 10. How to know if he's worth your time. Our next Reddit post comes from Anonymous.
It's hard to tell, but generally, the biggest one is effort. Someone who just wants to use you probably won't really try that hard because this is something he can get from anyone. He'll probably invite you over to watch Netflix or something, and he won't see or interact with you unless it's completely convenient. Meanwhile, a guy who actually likes you will try. What this looks like does depend on his budget, but no matter what, he'll actually attempt to find out what you like to eat or drink or do, and then make an honest effort to show you a good time and impress you. And he will take the initiative a lot of the time. He will want to see and talk to you, and he will try to make these things happen. You won't have to start every conversation. You won't go days and days without hearing from him. It won't be on you to plan every hangout. Again, effort. A guy who likes you will be interested in who you are as a person. He'll listen when you tell him about yourself, and he'll remember what you say. He won't shy away from personal topics that aren't related to intimacy. Someone who strictly wants to sleep with you will generally stick to small talk and dirty talk. Then, a guy who likes you will be patient when it comes to intimacy. If he's interested in a relationship, he'd probably prefer the intimacy element to develop at a pace everyone is comfortable with, so you have a solid foundation. A guy who just wants to sleep with you won't want to waste his time. He'll push intimate talk and touching even when it's not clearly reciprocated. There will probably be some pressure if you don't immediately respond to his advances.
Want more stories like this? Hit that subscribe button and let's dive deeper into the world of relationships. Story 11. The time I learned my lesson about bad boys. Our next Reddit post comes from Recycled Paper.
They still do nice things for you even when you're not interested in intimacy. When my depression was at its worst, I had 2 guy friends come out of the woodwork. Lots of, oh, let me do anything to help. I'm here for you. And when I did try to talk to them or just engage in polite conversation, the conversation turned into, you should move on, by sleeping with me. So gross. Conversely, I slept with a guy on a first date and he told me he didn't want anything serious or like a commitment. Sure, I can respect that. We continued to sleep together and I didn't expect anything out of it. But he'd bring me coffee at work, comfort me on my bad days, and would take the time to hang out with my friends just because I wanted to. He was a really nice guy and treated me better than my own ex-fiancée. He already got in my pants and could have just done nothing, but he treated me with respect and kindness. It helped me realize that I deserved the minimum.
Wow, that's a pretty stark contrast. Some people just don't get it. Story 12. The time I accidentally introduced my parents to my future husband. Our next Reddit post comes from Kitty Kathleen Meow.
This might be an odd rule of thumb, but looking back on my relationship history, I only ever thought about introducing my parents to the actual good ones. Most of the people that turned out to be bad, I never wanted my parents to meet, even if I didn't know they were bad boys at the time. So maybe somewhere deep down, our women's intuition really does know who's a keeper and who's not. Oddly enough, my SO, who I have been dating now for 6 years, ended up meeting my parents on our very first date because I had to run home for something and didn't think twice about asking him to come in and meet them. They were shocked. as I never brought anyone home. But I must have known somewhere deep down that he would be around for a while.
Story 13, How I Turned Casual Flings into Lasting Love. Our next Reddit post comes from Anonymous.
Well, I think most guys start off just wanting to get into your pants, but if you have intimacy with a guy, he's always going to want more intimacy. I think all of my relationships started out as a FWB ordeal, and then gradually turned into a real relationship, including my husband. But I was never into going on actual dates with guys that always seemed uncomfortable and awkward to me. I just got intoxicated and slept with guys I thought were hot, and then kept hanging out with them after LOL. I think they are the same as women. It's hard to have intimacy and spend a lot of time with someone without developing feelings. Usually after a few months, one or both would sleep with someone else, and it would turn into the, "Whoa, I really don't want you to do that again" conversation, and voila, a relationship was born.
Story 14, Why Waiting is the Ultimate Power Move for Women. Our next Reddit post comes from Boss Tunis.
This is funny. It reminds me of Ali Wong's new stand-up routine, where she says girls typically make a guy wait to have intimacy if they are genuinely interested in him. If not, they just want to use the guy for intimacy. I'd say the same. If you are really interested in the guy for a relationship, you make him wait a month or so. If you go out with him enough and watch him for his actions, you can tell if the guy is just going through the motions just to get in your pants, or if he's emotionally invested in you. I'd say typically a month is long enough to gauge whether you enjoy spending time with each other, and guys who are just trying to get into your pants will probably either be screwing other girls or moving along by then. Also, it's no big deal if he sleeps with you. Just don't suddenly start acting any different after intimacy. Just think of it this way. Wouldn't you rather have found out early if some guy was just using you for intimacy? You get to cut the guy out early before you really get invested in him. Be smart, but don't be too afraid of getting hurt either. Learning to keep up hope and optimism while dealing with emotional disappointment is basically the point of dating.
Story 15, All Guys Only Wants One Thing. Our next Reddit post comes from JMC1002.
Your question is vague, and if you want generic advice, just keep on scrolling through the numerous comments and what makes a good guy. A good guy is a subjective measure, so it's what works for you. That's why women struggle to leave cruel relationships, because somewhere in them they find a good guy. Don't overanalyze this because it has to work for you. You should feel comfortable with the guy, and most importantly, you should have fun, and it should be easy. If it's a struggle, then walk. What's stopping you? He hasn't got in your pants already, so why are you worried about walking? If you're a good judge of character, you will get more good guys than bad, but that's because you judge character better and select more compatible matches, not because there are more or less good or bad guys out there. Reality is, all guys will want to get in your pants. If we didn't, then we would be not straight and want to get in another dude's pants. Your actual question is, how do I keep a guy in my pants? For that, you need to ask yourself, what do I actually bring to the table? Too many girls are just pretty and nothing more. Guys get bored of them and leave them, or cheat. And the answer to that is lead a fulfilling life, have interests, be curious, confident, and genuine. If you're an interesting woman who is able to look after herself, you will be more appealing to guys, and they will want to stick around. One final thing I would say, beware of the jealous guys that would prevent you from doing this. You need a person who will support you maturing as a human being, but at the same time be comfortable telling you that he doesn't like you seeing your ex, for example. For that, you need a guy who is confident and active and fulfilled himself.
Story 16, Respecting is the New Sexy. Our next Reddit post comes from Smug Hippie.
They take no for an answer. I don't mean outright rejection, I mean if we are on a date and for whatever reason I don't want to get into sexy times, tired, sick, wanting to go slow, etc. They react with empathy and act like we're a team. So if I say I have an early morning and need a good night's sleep, they happily drop me off at home knowing I literally have an early morning and they text to wish me luck or whatever. Or if I'm sick and just not feeling sexy, they respond by asking what makes me feel better when I'm sick and then follow through. Soup, movies, foot rubs. And if I simply want to take it slow, They come up with activities to spend time together sans physical things. Basically, respecting and acknowledging feelings is sexy.
Story 17. I had to make all the first moves to my boyfriend. Our next Reddit post comes from Zelda Massa.
One of the best tells for me when I met my boyfriend was that he took things aggressively slow for me. I had to make all the first moves, sitting closer and closer to him until he had no choice but to put his arm around me, initiating the first kiss, etc. I was actually afraid that he wasn't interested for a while, but he later told me that he was just so nervous around me and he usually wasn't around girls. A little further into the relationship, when I was still suspicious, a result of lots of trust issues, it was the little things, like many people have said, that made it evident. He wouldn't just say nice things are compliments. He would actually do nice things. Usually guys who are faking being nice won't actually put in the effort to do things. They'll just schmooze with words. He would write little notes and stick them around my room, bring me a smoothie before class, drive me to class if I needed a ride, etc. Basically, actions speak much louder than words.
Story 18. I don't care if he wants to try my pants. Our next Reddit post comes from Lissa Kalol.
If he is interesting enough, I don't care if he wants to try my pants. Jokes aside, I think if you sleep with a guy after a couple of hours or days and still be mad if he leaves you afterwards, then you're kinda dumb, and I'd be hard-pressed to see the guy in question being at fault. I don't quite see getting into someone's pants as being exclusive to being good, but generally speaking, you should share your hobbies with that guy and try some of his hobbies, no matter how boring or strange they seem to be at first. If you do that and still believe he is awesome, chances are he is genuinely good for you. If there is a difference between love at first sight and falling in love, you should always try to aim for the latter. It's stronger, safer, and more rewarding. And if he just wanted to lay you, at least he earned it by then.
Story 19. Becoming her best friend instead. Our next Reddit post comes from Macro Hacks.
Obligatory not a girl, I'm a guy, but I'm hoping I may be able to provide a useful example. When I met the love of my life, I didn't think I was good enough for her, so I decided to become her best friend instead. I loved talking to her, hanging out with her, and I would follow her into any adventure, even things I never thought I would do, because with her, I felt safe and brave. One day she had a very unfortunate thing happen to her that I won't discuss the details of. I told her I would be here for her, and I checked in on her several times a day. Some people might think that sounds creepy, and maybe it is, but it was important to me that she knew she wasn't alone and someone cared about her happiness. She fell in love with me that day, and now we have been together for years. Long story short, no matter male or female, to me a genuine relationship comes from someone who makes you a better you. I wouldn't be the man I am today without her. She cares so much about me, she puts in time and effort to help me find happiness, and there's nothing more real to me.
Story 20. Friendly guy struggles. Our next Reddit post comes from Loyal Ledger.
So I started reading this and found it really interesting. I initially had a response about the original question, being a guy myself, but then started reading the debate about whether or not men care to be friends with women that are not single. I consider myself a genuinely good guy, who not only does care about people but can show it fairly well by doing exactly what many women here say they want, the little things. Despite that, I've not been very successful with women, which has led to a lack of, and thus desire for, intimacy. Since being in a hotel and having other ways of gaining satisfaction are illegal here in the good old US of A, this points me in the difficult situation of wanting into basically every girl's pants, but also being a genuinely good guy who would in turn be opposed to a good relationship. What is the dividing line here? I don't really think it is fair to even consider these two necessarily mutually exclusive. As for men being friends with women, most guys stop showing interest when they learn that a girl is already taken because, well, for a few reasons. I think most guys see interactions with women as a potential partnership, intimate or otherwise, and as soon as that prospect is shattered, then the interaction becomes pointless. Not saying they should, but here is my example of doing the opposite. I have been friends with a girl for about a year and a half now that I really like, and have been in a relationship since before I met her. When we originally started to become friends, I was just attracted to her physically and intrigued by the small pieces of her personality I saw through mutual friends. So I created conditions for us to become friends so I could learn more about her. My plan worked, and ultimately, I found that I really genuinely like her as a person. Problem being, she is still in a relationship. For me, this was a source of emotional distress knowing that my feelings could never be requited, and we would always see our relationship differently. This made the friendship more difficult for me, but not at all for her, so when I told her, it sort of led to a, "You don't want to be friends with me just because I won't sleep with you," sort of thing. Obviously, I did want to sleep with her, but it was about more than that. Long story short, being friends with girls when you are single can be a bad idea emotionally.
If you want to hear more stories like this, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to leave a comment below. Let's keep the conversation going. See you next time.